Hello and good day. ShawnJ here, and I'd like to welcome you to Underneath the Shade Tree. On today's episode, I get to sit down and chat with my buddy Fred Pitts, where he shares with us how the unique combination of acting and medicine gives him balance, what it feels like changing careers later in life, and learning how to represent with grace and dignity. So grab yourself a beverage or a snack and join us underneath the shade tree.
Hey, Fred.
What up? What up? ShawnJ, how are you?
I'm great. Boo, how you doing?
You know, I'm hanging in. It's a casual Sunday.
I think we're all doing that hanging in.
No, you're not kidding. Can't go do anything, really.
I know, you. So where are you originally from?
I grew up in Southwest Ohio, Dayton, Ohio, which was a very interesting place to grow up in the 60s and 70s and 80s. You know, there's Klan over there.
What's the Klan?
Yeah, you know what the Klan. You mean the Ku Klux Klan? Yeah.
Special K's.
Yeah, special case. No, I mean, I liked it. It was a good place to grow up. My parents were both college educated people, and, I went to pretty fun schools. I mean, it was interesting as I talk about going from, the all black public school up through fifth grade, going to an all Catholic white school in the sixth grade in 1976. So that was quite the transition, to say the least.
Where do you live now?
I live in San Francisco, border of Bernal Heights and the Mission.
How long have you been there?
I've been in San Francisco since 1997. I've been at this location since 2012? 2012. Because I moved here by way of college in Michigan, med school in Cleveland, residency in Chicago. So I've kind of been, it was like the great Midwest tour of places. But city, bigger city, big city. And then I came out here to San Francisco. I mean, I've always loved San Francisco, but I came out here because two reasons. One, my brother had already been out here because he'd done a summer at a law firm maybe a couple years before we graduated from law school and medical school, and he liked San Francisco. And I was just trying to find a good job in emergency medicine. And in Chicago, there were 40-something people who got done with their residency in emergency medicine the same time I did. And there weren't that many jobs in Chicago. so it's like, well, let me see someplace else to go. So I looked for a job in California. Actually I got a job in Oakland, but I figured when I moved out here, it was Oakland versus San Francisco. And my wife at the time and I said, well, we're just going to move in San Francisco. Right. It's changed since I've been here, 23 years. It's changed. All big cities change. Yeah. When I got here in the late 90s, it was just after one of the real estate crashes. So a lot of people had left. It was very, and I use the word bohemian to describe it. Then I guess the most accurate word is bohemian. It was very artsy. It was very tech, but not like it is now. Most of the tech was in Silicon Valley. You still had artists. You still had a lot of mom and pop shops on the majority of the streets in the city. You could still technically park, on the streets. And then the tech boom came, and that all changed. It's a different city. A lot less bohemian, a lot less artsy. It's funny when I moved out here. I tell this story. When I moved out here in '97, I had looked at a condo in Chicago, which is where I was living beforehand, and it was a 3,000 square foot condo on Michigan Avenue, like 12th floor, facing Lake Michigan, and they wanted like $320,000 for the place at the time. This is like '96 when I looked at that place, and I was like, I'm not paying $300,000 for a 3,000 square foot condo in Chicago. Plus, the place was decorated like it was owned by like Caligula. Don't even get me started. But when I moved out here, we were looking for places to live, and I remember this house we looked at on Pine Street. It was this beautiful Edwardian, just gorgeously appointed, great kitchen, all that. And they wanted like $690,000 for this place. And I was like, oh no, I'm not paying that much money for this, so we're just going to rent. Oh, well, I think it was like 10 years later, the same property sold for something like $4.6 million. So yeah, you can't buy here.
Not now.
No, not now. Not now. So unless I want to live out in Fairfield, and right now Fairfield's on fire, so I'm not going to Fairfield.
Okay. Mercy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I heard you said. Did you say you had a brother?
Yes, I got a younger brother. He
Any
lives
other
in,
siblings?
no, just him. Just two kids. Yeah, two boys. Yeah. I'm the one who was the oldest. I got married first, but I'm also the one who has no kids still. So he wanted the whole family dream. When we were kids, I was drawing pictures of airplanes and ships and stuff, and he was drawing family pictures of husband, wife, two children, and that's what he's got.
Dog and a cat.
No pets. No pets.
This is enough.
But but he's got an adorable niece and nephew. My niece and nephew, adorable. So yeah,
Perfect.
living the dream.
So, what would you say is your line of work?
I am by trade a doctor. I did 20. Well, I was actually practicing for 28 years. I did 20 years working in emergency departments, meaning residency in Chicago, and I did 16 years practicing emergency medicine in Oakland, which was a trip. And then when I got done with that, I did about a year and a half. I should back up and say I did emergency medicine, but I was a medical director of the ER there for like 6 years. And then when I got done there, I was director of a public health clinic in San Francisco for close to a year and a half, maybe like a year and 4 or 5 months. Left there and then became medical director of a workers' comp clinic in San Francisco, which I did until about 6 weeks ago. And now I'm completely out of clinical medicine. And now I work in drug safety, patient safety, drug safety for a biopharmaceutical company in the peninsula.
So you have a desk job now?
I have a desk job now.
Wow.
Yeah.
How does that feel?
Honestly, ShawnJ, I'm happy with it.
Good.
I really am. I mean, I remember when I loved patient care, but if you're doing it long enough, it will wear on you and it will tap your last nerve. And I got to the point where I knew I was done. You know, I'd done my time. I'd given as much as myself as I could for that. And it felt like it was the right time to step away. And I'm still able to be, you know, a doctor and apply what I've known, but now it's dealing with, you know, the medications that we treat people. In fact, my field is now going to be working with HIV meds. So, yeah, so I'll be doing drug safety for HIV meds, all those. So, yeah. Yep.
So you just sort of hinted, you said by trade, you are this, but
you knew I was going with that.
say
Yeah,
more.
my other life is I'm an actor, as are you, which is how we met. And I've been doing acting since I was 5 years old. So that's the other half of who I am, and I mean that with all sincerity. You know,
Yeah.
I'm as much of a doctor as I am an actor. You know, so
Yes.
yeah.
So how do we know each other? How do we?
I have no idea. I think you just sent me this random email, and I was like, "Yeah, I'll do your show." I don't know who you are. No, you and I met. I think the first time we had to have met was the African American Shake Show. I don't think I met you before we did that.
No, what show was that?
Jitney.
Jitney.
That was Jitney. That was 2017.
Yep. August Wilson's Jitney.
Yep.
Yeah, that was a good year for me. That was the year I turned 50.
Right.
Year I did I would say my favorite role thus far.
Turnbow.
As Turnbow in August Wilson's Jitney. And then
Crazy.
I got my house in 2017.
Oh, I didn't think I knew you about your house in 2017. Okay.
Yeah.
But for me, I did that show, and then I got married. Because we got married, we did the show in April, I think. April. I think it was April.
Yeah.
April 2017, and I got married in June. So yeah, that was good for me too.
Yes.
So that's how we met, and then since then we've been friends since then.
Yeah.
And now you're my director. See how that works?
Well, you're like a brother. You're like an older brother.
Oh, you see, you know, I'm not that much older than you. You know that. we are both in our 50s, so shut up.
Yes, this is very true. So, what is a favorite thing for you to do outside of theater, outside of medicine?
when we were doing it, we were able to do it, travel. I just like to get out and see stuff, whether it's traveling around the States, traveling overseas. And I've got my list of places I haven't gone yet. You know, I've never been to Africa, Asia, not yet, but those are places I want to go just to check out, you know. Yeah, travel. I think, and you said acting, that's my other life, but just traveling and reading. You know, I read. This is what I read: history,
and probably accurate history.
Well, yeah, it's just history. Yeah, I don't read historical fiction. I read stuff that has been researched by people who, you know, they take time to find out what's factual and what's not. I don't do history that's put online.
Yes.
Just don't do that.
That's wonderful stuff.
You know, and it's funny because people ask why I don't read nonfiction. I mean, why I don't read fiction. And I say, well, I think it's far more fascinating reading about the stuff that really happened. Because the stuff that really happened is far more outrageous, really, than anything we can really make up. I mean, some of the stuff I read, it's like, really, that happened? Really? You know?
We are a unique, special blend.
Yes, we are. You know? And I think it helps to know where we've been, so you can think about where you are, and then plan on where you're going. You know? Which is one of the reasons I don't, because you and I have talked about this. You know, with all the racial unrest in the world, if you want to call it that. For us, for the world, it is one step forward, two steps back, or one step forward, two steps back. We still go forward, but it's just getting older and learning that change happens, but it's hard to make change happen in 2 seconds.
And the reality of it is that with that whole, things have to phase out, which means the old has to die away.
Yes.
In order for something new to be planted, or basically while something is dying away, you still have to have already seeded area.
And fertilized it.
So that when that does fade out, you have something to build upon. But I think a lot of folks are more reactionary.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of like going, we need to plan ahead. So that when these mofos die out, we got shit in place. Hopefully, by the gods, come November, we will seize the right moment.
We'll see. I mean, you and I have been through this before. Yeah. You know, I remember the conversation.
I just don't want to go through it anymore. I think it's sort of like, it's too much.
You know, it's. There's a book I'm reading called White Rage, and I can't remember the author. It's in the back bedroom, and basically, it was written in 2016 or 17. And it basically is a story about how, as U.S. history has changed, especially if we're talking about progress with civil rights or progress with minority Black people, you know, something happens, and then there's a majority reaction to it. You know, you talk about, you know, emancipation, then you talk about the Black codes, you know, and then you talk about, you know, Plessy versus Ferguson, and then you talk about civil rights, but then you're talking about, you know, the Nixon administration and, you know, the law, the war on crime. You know, or the 80s with, you know, the Reagan administration and the incarceration thing, or the new Jim Crow, as they called it. So there's always reaction. You know, even people started writing about the fact that, you know, when Barack won in 2008, and then we had the person now in office who won in 2016, it was like, it was totally reactionary. This is not surprising to us, but for a lot of people who thought, you know, we elected the Black president, we are beyond race.
Well, we've changed.
No, we're not. You know, it's just kind of how it's been. I'm not saying it's acceptable, but it's how it's been. And in history, you know, like I said, we do change, but it just takes a while to change. And we do have to, you said, put in the work for seeding and fertilizing and realizing that, you know, change doesn't happen overnight. No. It just doesn't.
Even in people, I think we expect people to change overnight instantly. Because I remember like all these, we're in cancel cultures, but people are saying it. And I think there are these folks, white folks, who have done things 5, 10, 15 years ago, and we're kind of holding them to the fire. And I think to some of them, I think we need to, yes.
Right.
But I think there's also an accountability factor, right? We need to give people the opportunity to evolve and to grow and to have that grace. So like someone who's, I'm not the same person I was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
imagine how I was 10 years ago. So when a white man or white person says something in a tweet 10 years ago, and I'm like, I'm going to read the tweet. I'm going to go, well, what year was it? Oh, that was the culture then. And is that person still showing that same behavior?
Right.
Then yes. But if that person has gone through the work of changing and growing and evolving, and they don't have that same outlook, I don't think, like, we give them the opportunity to go, hey, yeah, I did some fucked up shit back then. That was stupid. But I have now since done the work to not be that way. And I think we should have the grace to go, thank you. Because those are the kind of people we need with us in this fight. But if they get dismissed, discarded, that doesn't work.
You and I have read pretty much a lot of the same books. I saw your post a few weeks ago, the books to read, recommend for people to read, White Fragility being one of them. So now you want to talk about race. These are kind of books where I think they're interesting because we want change, but I think it's too easy to just call somebody, the R word, because what's going to happen is they're automatically going to put up that wall of defense and freak out. I was reading last night, and I think this is true. Back in the 60s, when civil rights, when in the civil rights movement, television changed things. They really did.
Yeah.
And it brought the bigotry to light by showing the rest of the country what was going on. Like, granted, we all know what kind of bigotry was going on in Detroit, and I can tell you stories about, racial attacks and that stuff that's going on in the North just as much as the South. But what ended up happening was you saw these people in the South, in this racist behavior, and then unfortunately the narrative changed so that it was easy, I think, to label racism as that kind of overt Klan stuff.
Right.
It was easy to say racism and racist is now attached to that kind of overtly bigoted, abusive, violent nature. Pretty much the Klan or white supremacists or whoever. And I think it gave people, I won't say license to excuse themselves, but it kind of gave people a mindset that said, okay, I'm not behaving like that, so I'm clearly not a racist.
Right. Because that's the extreme.
Yeah, I think we simplified it, and I think the problem is now it's the word has been weaponized. Yeah. I'm older. I have my views on what a racist is. I've met a racist. You and I have met thousands of stuff.
Yeah, and trust me, they didn't have no hood on.
Right.
They didn't have any kind of cross burning. They were just
But I don't even like using the word racist and calling somebody racist. Most of the time, I'll just say they're a bigot. Or they got a lot of prejudice. That's just me. I don't know how other people describe it, but I think people need to be given the chance to change.
Yeah.
Honestly, I do. And if we're looking at the word allies, we can't get our allies by saying you're a racist, go fix it. That ain't gonna work. Because there are African Americans who got that racist attitude too. Because they just do.
Yes, we know.
So I think we all have to. I think what you said is right. I think we have to have that grace to give people a chance to change. Now, if someone's not going to change, that's fine. And there are people out there, you and I know, on social media, who have their points of view, in one direction or another, and their sole purpose is to invalidate what you think, and control the conversation. Which that's not anything I've got interest in. If you want to have a conversation about this and learn and understand why, I think that systemic racism exists and you don't, and why, of course, you don't think so because X, Y, Z, because in this country, as far as I can remember, there has never been any kind of systemic racism set up for anybody except really black people. Because redlining was basically black folk. Jim Crow was black folk. That's how it was. Specifically. Every minority in this country has experienced prejudice. Absolutely, all of them. So I'm not trying to say we're better or that we deserve more, but
we're not doing the oppression Olympics.
Right. Exactly. Okay, I have to.
However.
Yes. Yeah. However, if you look at this history, there's only really been one group of people who have been consistently and systematically, put in a lower place in this country's history. That's just reality. and honestly, if you read a lot of history and you read some of the conversations people had when other minorities would come in, the mindset was always, well, at least I'm not black. No matter what, it was like, at least they're not black, or at least I'm not black. I'm getting prejudiced, but at least I'm not black. I can still buy a house, but that's just, those are the things we have to work through. And we do, we do need our allies to work hard, and we also need us to realize that it's not going to change overnight. It's just not. I don't know if you know this, and you know me, I'll just talk forever. There was I don't know if you know the black jazz musician. I can't think of his name because we're on an interview. He's the one. Yeah, the one. No. The one who's been collecting Klan robes for the last 30 years. Do you know about this?
No.
I think there's a CNN special. I think it's called Inconvenient Truth or Inconvenient Friends or something. It's a black jazz musician from New Orleans who has for the last 30 years purposefully kind of become friends with Klansmen just to find out why they hate him. His statement is always, "You don't know me, so why do you hate me?" So he started going in, can you meet with me? Yeah. And they'll meet and they'll talk. And he's got this collection of 40 Klan robes from Klansmen who have actually left the Klan, on purpose, and he's now friends with. So it's a fascinating documentary. It really is. But there's a moment in that documentary where he's in Baltimore, and he's meeting with some young black activists. And there's some serious friction there because their point of view is, why are you wasting time talking to these people who are Klansmen, trying to get them to change when you could or should be, in their view, doing all this other stuff, the activist stuff that they're doing. And it really, they got mad. I mean, really mad, to the point that they walked off camera. And he was like, well, okay, but that's how he wants to do things. So I don't know if there's a right way or wrong way to fix stuff. There isn't, but
there isn't, and I think that's a whole other.
Yeah, it's a whole other.
That's another conversation because
Yep.
we have to remember that each of us comes from a different place.
Yep.
And each of us comes from a different experience, point of view.
Yep.
Where it impacts, where it lands, and what's right for you may not be right for me.
Right.
Neither one is wrong nor right. It's what, and I wish I'll get that information from you about this documentary because I want to note it in the notes, because the reality is that gentleman was making an impact.
Right, exactly. I'm grabbing my phone because I'm going to pull it up while you're talking.
And so because that person wasn't out making noise doesn't mean that he wasn't making an impact. He chose a different route that worked for him to make change.
Exactly.
And to be able to make a person who's in the Klan leave the Klan, that former Klans person then goes out and has an effect on the people that they know, because now they're white. They actually have more influence.
Yeah.
So now they're going to have a greater reach. So,
yeah. I mean, there's different methods to doing this. There really are.
There is no one. Because if there was one,
we would solve it long. It'd be gone. It'd be totally gone. Totally gone. I mean, even right now on social media, I mean, you see me, I post stuff all the time. And I'm always going through in my mind, do I want to post things? Do I not want to post things? Do I want to be confrontational? Do I not want to be confrontational? And, I get my fair share of, 95% of my replies are in the positive. I get a couple of people, the friends from high school who like to troll. Like the one friend who just basically was like, system. I think it was something his post was like, I don't think systemic racism. I think it's racists in the system. I don't think the system is racist. And then he kept brought in the argument about gun control. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. A little bit deflection, but whatever.
And then it's exactly what it is. It's deflection, because if you actually look at it, you will see it. It's not covered in moss.
Right.
It's really clear to see.
Well, and also we have to realize, I know this. It's like, you're not going to tell me racism doesn't exist if you're not someone who experiences racism. And they tell me that, you've experienced racism because you went into a black neighborhood and blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay, so you went in the 1% of the country and couldn't get whatever, and you feel like there was prejudice, so you should be able to go wherever you want to, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's turn the tables. I should be able to go wherever I want to, that 99%, and not have to deal with the same thing. Just saying.
Yeah, I don't think if I have people in my circle that I don't know about who does that, they don't show themselves.
Okay.
I believe uh, people who do know that if you post a rebuttal or something on my, like if you put a comment,
Yeah, I know.
I delete negative shit like
Good.
that, and I delete stupid shit like that. Like
Yeah.
I don't respond. I just simply
Okay. Yeah.
delete unless
Yeah.
a friend of mine will have his friends will see it and they'll get on that person, and then I'll go, oh, y'all got on it before I was able to delete it, and
And
then they're going back and forth.
And you and
But
I have talked about this because you will go out. I won't say you will go after somebody, but you have more of a pit bull thing than I do. We both know this. I'm not saying in a negative way, but you know how it is. If you and I were running for Congress, I would be up making the political speeches. I would have you on the ground attacking people, in a good way. But that's just how that's how we are. That's why we get along.
yeah, because
But, yeah.
I do believe sometimes there is um, a nice way to do things, you know, and but then sometimes I'm also like, no, shit needs to get done. And the only way this shit gonna get done is da 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 da.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think I have both approaches depending on the
Yeah, in
situation.
the situation, yeah, yeah.
But I'm not always a pit bull, so they are loving. But that's the thing, a pit bull is very loving
That,
and
that's not a
protective,
negative thing. That was not a negative thing, by the way. You know that.
right? Because pit bulls are very loving,
Yeah,
protective, but they're also
yeah.
fierce.
They will go if they need to.
So maybe I should get pit bull. That's me, you
You
know.
should. Yeah, you could.
So transitioning,
Yep.
we can talk about race relations like
For hours. Yep.
forever.
Forever.
This is supposed to be about you.
Yeah.
What would you say, or could you say, is one of your proudest moments to this point in your life?
You asked me that when I knew it. That's always a challenging question. There's not. I don't really have a proudest moment. I think for me, if I say I'm proud of something, it's the fact that I'm an African American male who's been a medical director several times in essentially white institutions. That's something that's like
Boom.
it didn't really. Yeah, I know. It didn't really faze me, but I was like, I looked at my resume one day. I was like, well, damn. Exactly.
That's big.
And you know me.
If you think about that, because you're a little too modest, think about
Yeah.
the little black boy, the little black girl, and just the white people in general who see you in those environments, in that position. That, again, representation matters.
Yeah, it does.
You represent, boo.
Yeah, I know. It's because you know me. I've never been. I am not a prideful person. To me, in fact, you get on me because I have like too little ego, as you say, as you said at one point. Whatever. Yes, you did. But it was always nice in medicine when I would walk in a patient's room, black patient particularly, and they would just be like, "You're the doctor?" "Yes, ma'am." "Oh, honey." And I was like, "Yes, ma'am." They're like, "Oh,
Oh my God.
that I would say that would in my career. That's what gave me joy. That reaction from people.
And see, and that just gave me chills because imagine that person seeing you, and if they're older, right?
Yeah, they were
They
older.
have all this history of knowing what
Yep.
the medical establishment has done to
Yep.
them, done to our people, and to
Mhm.
see like you in your position, and you walk through that door, and she's going,
It's
that
true.
like it was worth it. Like
Yeah, it
you
was.
represent the challenges and the hardships and the sacrifices that generation and the generation before us have made. So it's like, boo, you better start waving that damn flag.
I'm getting better at it. My last job, when I was director of the Med clinic I worked in, there was a young woman we just hired. It was one of there are very few African American doctors I work with, just because that's just the nature of medicine. If you're not working at Meharry or Howard or one of the black medical schools, there's a paucity of minority doctors. Although there were a lot more in Oakland, but this young girl we hired at my clinic, one day she was just like, "It's just nice to have my boss be a black man." And I said, "Well, I will make sure that you get what you need in this damn job." And I will. I mean, it felt bad that I left because it was like I had to take care of me. But I was like,
Right.
let me just do what I can for her while she's there.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
who knows? She may follow you. She may be going, "Oh, we'll get up out of here."
And it's funny because I've spent my whole life dealing with being one of the few, if not the only minority in anything. I started in 6th grade with the white Catholic school, and it's been my entire life. So you have that experience of, we used to call it, what did they call it, the Oreo? Back when we were younger. The stereotype view of what I am because they'll say I'm whatever.
Black on the outside, white on the inside, all that BS.
White in the middle, whatever.
Journey.
And it's funny as I look at myself and I go, yeah, I grew up in my formative years were in a white high school, so I heard black music, but most of my friends were white. So yeah, I grew up on Van Halen and rock and roll, so I like all of it. I read history. I read all history. It doesn't matter what. I mean, I got my shelf of the people who came before me. Everything on King and William Monroe Trotter, and I'll read a book on Grant or Woodrow Wilson, whatever, because that's what history is. But yeah, it's you as you get older, you realize that there's not, especially as a black man in this country, you realize there's not a textbook that said you have to behave this way to be black. And for a long time when I was younger, I mean, I always knew I was black, but I always felt like I wasn't representing, if that makes any sense. Because everybody else had their points of view. You're not doing this, you're not doing that, so you're not black enough, which is bullshit, to be honest with you. But as I've gotten older, it's like, oh no. If you can't tell me who William Monroe Trotter is, then guess who's blacker? If you want to make that statement.
and that's that journey that I think that we all make within the black community, is that we have to accept that we are a wide swath of people.
Yes.
And we don't just all come from one place. Like our origins isn't slavery. Our origins is Africa. And we all come from different tribes within Africa.
Yeah.
I think if we all remember that, those tribes had different systems in place, different beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't operate all the same. So like when we were stolen here, we're going to still incorporate some of that history that we don't even know about.
Right.
Because I remember when I was a kid, I unfortunately, I used to be, they would say, "Oh, you talk so proper."
Oh, God.
You talk so proper. And
you speak so well. You speak so well.
Well, and the thing is, I heard it, and I heard it so often that I stopped.
Okay.
And I would start mumbling my words. I would get, and to this day, I have to really be aware of how I speak, because I took on the habit of not speaking well.
Okay.
Because I heard it so often.
Yeah.
I talk so proper that I stopped speaking proper.
It's funny, the way I speak, I never changed because my mother was the one who just said, look, there is no color the way you speak. As far as I'm concerned, you sound like, this is how you speak. This is how I taught you to speak. I'm done.
Like Fred.
Yeah, you sound like Fred. So I never changed.
Yeah.
There was that slight tendency sometimes where you're, with, a couple of young black kids and you kind of think you're going to have that little bit of a thing going just to kind of fit in a little bit. And then I got older and thought, it's not going to happen because it doesn't look real.
Yeah.
In fact, even the thing with Jitney, playing Sheely, that is as far removed from me as you could possibly imagine. It's like, I look at the pictures and I remember doing it and I remember thinking, okay, that was me giving myself permission from a mother to just let it go.
Yeah. Let it go.
Let's just let it go. So that was,
Yeah. So I'm going to need you to remember what you represent.
I will, sir. I will.
Okay.
I know it. I mean, I know it. I just don't talk about it.
Yeah. Well.
Okay. Yes, sir. Fine.
There we have it.
Okay.
What has annoyed you in your time on this planet, like the most? Would you say? What?
My tendency to what annoys me most is my tendency to let people get to me. Bar none. I mean, it's my whole life, for better or for worse, has always been about trying to please everybody, which is the worst thing you could possibly do. But that's just me. That's just how I function. So if I'm doing something and someone says something negatively about me, or if someone's angry with me, or I do something wrong, it affects me more than anything. It's like I feel like I'm a bad person. That's it's the example I'll give is when because we've talked about this. I was married before, and it didn't work out. I mean, nothing untoward. Nobody had an affair, none of that crap. It just didn't work out. But I stayed in the marriage for a while because I just didn't want to hurt the other person. Just didn't. So it was a case of, nail holes in the hand, get off the cross, we need the wood. The self-sacrificial person. Sorry. And when I finally made that decision, the hardest thing about it was how much it hurt her. And I could see the pain. But it was the first time in my life that I really realized that I really can't make anybody else happy if I'm not happy. And so that's the most annoying thing about my life is like, it took me a long time to realize that. And it's still challenging to do that, because I really do want to please everybody. And you know that, me. That's kind of how I am. So it's hard. It's been harder for me to take criticism. I think it's like I failed in some way about this other person, but I'm getting better at that. So that's the one thing that's annoyed me, I think, is just me just wanting to try to please everybody and not understanding that ain't what's going to happen.
So where do you think that stems from?
Oh, I know what it stems from. I'm not going to get into it in detail, but it goes from just childhood experiences. I'll just say that, and you just feel like, and also even when I was sent from an all-black school to an all-white school, that's one big thing. Because in the 70s, you were different, especially as a black kid in an all-white school in the 70s. It was the era of desegregation. The second set of desegregation. So my goal was to fit in at all costs, So I think that moment was when I just realized that I wanted to make everybody happy. I didn't want to be the outcast or didn't want to feel like I didn't belong. So no matter what I did, I just wanted to be buddies with everybody. And so, of course, sometimes it's tolerating the little racial slights and that kind of stuff. It was horrible. There was one kid that was. We talked about it in the show. But, that was probably one of the big triggers, among other things. Just trying to fit in.
Right.
Not trying to rock the boat.
I think I may have had it a little easier because I went St. Louis, Missouri. My school was mostly black folks, and we had spattering of white folks. But there were people who looked like me, talked like me, bullies, of course. But I think, I didn't have to worry about so much fitting in, even though I had the gay aspect of fitting in, but I didn't butch it up. I was just simply, this is who I am. And so I think that aspect of growing up was a little easier in that regard. I didn't try to fit in as much, but I was also not being fully myself. So I think there's an aspect of that, of fitting in is not fully being
yourself. I think we all have that.
Yeah.
That's the most annoying thing I think as I look back on my life. Yeah. Personally annoying. I mean, it's not uncommon.
Yeah.
But you kind of you look back and you think, well, maybe things would have been different if I had.
Yeah.
Woulda, shoulda, coulda.
Can't change that now.
Yeah, can't change that. Nope. I realize that now.
But that just kind of made me think of something. So if you could change something in your past, in your journey, would you? And if you would, what would that be and why?
It would have been interesting for me to have gone to an all-black college.
Huh?
That would have been interesting. I mean, I don't know if it would have changed me or not changed me. But I remember when I was applying for colleges, there were my list of places, most people do. And my dad was a Morehouse man. My dad went to Morehouse. And I thought about Morehouse, but it never made it onto my list of places to which I really applied. Because in my mind at that time, it was kind of like, I got to go someplace and just, if I got to fit in this white world, I just got to go deal with these people. I think that was kind of what was in the back of my head. In fact, I had a black counselor who was not at my high school, but kind of was like, that was the mindset that person had. And for better or for worse, it was. Yeah. I don't know how different I would have. how differently I would have turned out. No idea. I just would have been curious because I remember when I was in high school. I don't know if you remember, Jack and Jill.
Like a club or something.
Yeah, so Jack and Jill and Top Teens, love these names. These were big African American. Stop using African American. These were black organizations, and they were big in the '70s. I don't even know if they exist anymore, but they were. I call them social organizations for black. Mainly it was black women at the time, where they would, get their kids together. They would do charity work. They do a lot of things. They were like Jack and Jill was one, and Top Teens was the other. And a lot of their MO was just, getting their kids together and giving them opportunities that they may not otherwise have. And they would have these annual conventions every summer. And I remember the most fun I had was, having growing up in a white, high school. These were my friends and I loved it and I had fun. But when I would go to the Jack and Jill convention, in the summers, it was like, oh, there are a lot of black people here. and there were a lot of them looked and sounded like me. The black kids who have this way of speaking. So I remember thinking, this is kind of cool. I really enjoyed that every summer. And that's, I think, one of the things that made me think in my head, maybe I should go to a black college, but I just never did it. So that would have been interesting just to see.
Yeah.
Just to see. I mean, I did apply to a black medical school. Resident medical school? Howard. Yeah, Howard. For medical school. And of all things, didn't get in. So much for that. Solve that problem.
Well, you should try.
Yeah, I did. Yeah. It all worked out. It all worked out in the end. So yeah, that would have been interesting to see.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. I'm not sure it would have changed me that much or not.
What brings you the greatest joy?
Honestly, performance.
Mm.
That's easy.
Why is that?
It's funny. My acting teacher, Cliff Osmond, used to say it's free therapy. It is. But it is also a chance to be or experience something that you're not in your regular life. When I really got into acting, when I moved out here 20 years ago, when I was working in the ERs, when you work as an ER doctor, you cannot show emotion at all because you're dealing with, life and death all the time. So you have to be like this every day. And when you're like that every day at work, you tend to be like that in life. You're not experiencing the ups and downs of emotion. So when I first started doing performance in class, a lot of my performances were very stable, very steady. The situation, whatever the situation was in the scene, I was always in control. And I remember Cliff said to me once, like, I understand that you have to be in control in emergency medicine, but being in control all the time when you're performing, honestly, is boring. Because people watch theater so they can experience the stuff that they can't, or don't want to. So they want to see people lose it. And this is the place where you are free to be the guy that has the affair, to be the angry guy, to be slightly crazy, to have an affair on stage, because that's the safe place. It is a performance. It is a film. And once you leave that, then you go back to your life. But here, there is nothing that says you can't be this way. There's no patient that's going to look at you because you're being overly emotional. There's no board of directors who's going to say, you can't cry, you can't laugh, you can't do this at work. It's just people who are watching you be honest. So that's, I think, why I love performing, because I get to either be parts of me that I normally am not, or I get to create a character out of thin air, which I hadn't thought of. Probably the best way I can say it,
Yeah. I do find it surprising. I'm dovetailing off of what you just said, that as an ER doctor, you have to be this way. Like, they don't allow.
I won't say, there's no rule.
Right.
You don't sign a contract that says you can't be this way. But emergency medicine, especially when you work with trauma and all that kind of stuff, you're dealing with families. You have a patient that comes in who's dying or dies. You have to be stable for the family. You have a coat on the floor. Everyone's freaking out. You have to be calm.
Yeah.
When you're doing it, you really just can't be emotional, because I guess the best way to explain it is you see so much good and bad. If you're emotional all the time, you will last about maybe a year in that field.
That makes sense.
You can't do that because you won't last. You can't invest that much emotion all the time in that world. So
You have to
that's
compartmentalize it.
Yeah, you had to compartmentalize it.
Yeah.
And that was a challenge because when I got out of, when I went into the acting class, I was still compartmentalizing. So it's like
You can't do.
no, yeah. If you're having a scene, where you're playing, if you're doing, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, and you're doing George and Martha, and you're given a scene to play George, and the confrontation, she's like this, and you're just always calm. Nobody wants to watch that.
No. Well, your director would be like, "What the hell are you doing?"
Exactly what they would do. And plus, Cliff would film it, so you got to watch yourself acting, and then you'd say, "Wow, that was boring."
Yeah.
So then you learn that it's okay. And also, ShawnJ, I think for me, there's a big fail factor in my life. I've never wanted to fail at anything. So there's the fear of failure. And when it came to performance, I wasn't early on brave enough to do something that far away because then I would be afraid of failing. So you just kind of keep stable.
Yeah.
People tend to cast based on who you are. Your personality. So I was the stable person. I was the father, the lawyer, the doctor, the whoever. In everything if I think back, actually the funniest roles I've had, so there was one, but I was actually, I don't know if you know the Heidi Chronicles, the play The Heidi Chronicles. So there's a character in the play called Peter Patrone. Peter Patrone is a gay doctor in the 80s, flamboyant. That's how they wrote it in that period. And they cast me in that role, and I was like, oh, okay. I didn't want to do it the way the director wanted because I didn't want to be, it wasn't like over the top, but it was like, he couldn't be me. He was reactionary, and he was dramatic, and he was loud, and he was confrontational. And I was like, I don't want to do that because I don't want to put up this horrible stereotype version, blah, 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 blah. And the director was like, do the performance. Do a real performance. Don't go over the top with some stereotype, but just make the guy honest. Yeah. And just relax. And that was the first time I think I did a role where it was like, it wasn't me. And I got to be a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more who I'm not, or maybe part of who I am that I just kind of cloud over.
Right.
Yeah. So that one and Sheely, I think are the ones that are just bigger than anything I've done before. Because like I said, most of the time it's the father, the lawyer, the stable character, the grounding force in the middle of the tornado around. I'm never the winds. At least I wasn't, But now I'm getting
fun.
Huh?
The wins are fun.
They are. I mean, like the last show I did, The Sweat, Brucey.
Yeah.
That's nowhere near me. But, that's been years of allowing myself to be relaxed and just go a place I've never been before.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm finding those roles are the most fun.
Well, because you're able to tap into the human side and the letting go. Like,
yes.
I think that's the big part. I think, like, yeah. So I think we both got in the same show and similar roles with the opportunity to just be free.
Exactly.
So,
well, that's the thing. You want to be in control, or at least for me, it was like, how's that going to be perceived when people watch me?
Right.
There was that for me. But once I got over that, it was like, because Sheely, like I said, Sheely was me like that. No.
It was fun.
It was so much fun. It was so much fun.
That show, I think it's one of those.
I've got a special place in my heart for that show. I do.
Like, damn, black folks on stage being black.
Yep, and having fun.
And having fun. It was
having fun. Yeah. And I still think we should do Ma Rainey, but you don't want to see black people on stage get shot. No, you don't. I know. All right. Well, we'll do 2 Trains Running then.
So, who, if there is a person you admire the most, who is that person? And
I've got 3. I'll say 3.
I want you to narrow it down to 1.
Fine. Admire the most? Probably my dad. Will be 92 in January. I think that's right. He grew up in the South in Jim Crow, Georgia. He went to college, Morehouse. Loves to tell a story about how he went to college with 2 grocery bags full of clothing. He went and fought in Korea in the middle of his college and then came back to finish. Then went to Atlanta U, became the first person in Atlanta University history to graduate with a master's degree in math. This is like 1955 or 56 or something like that. Also, we'll add the fact that he was in the same class or the class above Martin Luther King at the same time at Morehouse. And then came to Ohio to work as, one of the black people who worked for the government when they were, giving jobs to black people at the time. And at some point became what's called a GS-15, which is the highest rank you can get as a civilian working for the Air Force. So he ran the government's computer center for like 10, 15 years. So he did a lot, especially from where he came from. Actually, the chairman of the deacon board of our church. And there's a story that I'm still trying to figure out how to get from him so I can turn it into a play. So, which you'll be in. So, in 1983, I think, and at the time, they were very, at least our church was sexist in the point that none of the deacons were women. Well, there was a woman in the church that the women's group brought forward to serve on the deacon board. And my dad actually supported her. I think that either was when he became deacon, chairman of the deacon board, or close to it. He was a very outspoken person about getting her on as a deacon. Well, the church was having none of that. None. And it kind of split down the middle. There's one meeting I can still remember in my head as a kid or as a high schooler going to where it was like a Thursday night, and they all got to the church and they all argued and yelled and screamed at each other in 2 different sides. And I remember this older lady, I've forgotten what her name was, but at one point she yelled out, "Lord, God done left the church." Well, she was eventually elected on the deacon board, I think a couple weeks later or a week later. And the following Sunday morning, we go to church. We're sitting in our usual place in the back of the church because we got there late because I would make sure we got there late. You know about that in my story. And Reverend Younger says, well, he starts off with, in the 25 years I've been at this church, and I looked at my dad and I said, he's resigning. My dad was like, what are you talking about? 5 minutes later, I'm resigning as pastor of this church for XYZ. My dad was like, what? And so my dad became the chairman of the deacon board because he was the one who got her on the church board, and then he was the one who went and led them trying to find a new minister, for our church. So not only was he doing stuff outside of it, he was the leader inside the church. But that story I still remember in my head. It's still effective, and I still want to make that into a play.
Well, because the pastor resigned because they let her on the deacon board, basically.
Well, I think he resigned because we never really found out. I think he resigned because he didn't think he could lead the church going in that direction.
Because there was a woman on the deacon board.
I guess, yeah, I know. But whatever. He resigned. But he resigned. And half the church left. Half the church left and went someplace else, and then people stayed, and then my dad became the chairman, and we got a new minister, and it's still a church. Yes. But yeah.
He's moving on.
Yep. But yeah, my dad.
Who would be the second one?
That's a challenge. You know what? 2 of the 3. Robert Kennedy.
Really?
Yep.
Did you know him?
No, I didn't know him at all. I'm not talking about people I knew. If you want to talk about people I knew, I can, I'd probably add my mom. But these are people I admire. You want people I know?
Well, if it's the person you admire the most, it could be Robert Kennedy. I'm not going to judge you.
Yeah, you are, but that's okay. No, I know you. Here's the deal with Bobby Kennedy. So, obviously he came out of that family, and everybody's like, oh, John Kennedy, XYZ. We talk about people changing. Robert Kennedy is one of those people who actually went through that change. An incredible change. I've watched so many documentaries and read at least 4 biographies of him. And he was, Irish Catholic guy, and that Kennedy family. Now, his dad, Joe, was a racist. We all know that. But, and John was a politician. And Bobby Kennedy was the pit bull in that family. And actually had I would say, a positive view of race, but he was a pragmatist. So for him, it was like, we need to make sure that we do what we can for everybody in this government, and not just, the Negroes at the time. When he lost his brother, that changed him because he had to look at himself because he was lost. He had his whole life was supporting his brother. And then when his brother got shot, he was lost. And so in that period, he discovered that he was not so much a politician, but somebody who actually cared about humanity more than anybody that he thought he would. So he really started to go out and talk to the poor, really poor Black, poor Latino, poor everybody. And at least everything I've read about him was he truly did make that change. I still remember, I'm sure you've watched the video, the speech he gave in Indianapolis the night that Martin Luther King got shot. So he was supposed to do a campaign stop in Indianapolis. I think it was in a Black neighborhood at the time. And it was supposed to be like 7 o'clock at night or 8 o'clock at night. This is like 2 hours after King died, same day. And so they filmed this. And so his aides were saying, you shouldn't make this speech. And he said, no, I'm going to do this. And so you watch him on film saying, I have some very sad news for you, for anybody who loves peace and love in America, and that is that Dr. Martin Luther King was shot and killed this evening. And you hear the audience freak out. And he basically just says, I know many of you, and I'm paraphrasing horribly, I know many of you will feel angry, especially at white people in this country, but I can remember, some of you love being shot, but I can also tell you is that I remember my family was shot, and it's, it is natural to feel that way, but and he went on to just kind of say he hopes that we can have, work together and move forward, etc. There's like a 5 or 10 minute speech. There were no riots in Indianapolis that night. None. And I still watch that video and think, well, damn, good for you. I can't imagine any other politician, especially a white one at that time, actually making that speech at that time. And then what happens? He gets shot 6 weeks later.
Because he made that speech.
Well, maybe. I mean, Sirhan, I don't even know if Sirhan did, but I know. Probably did. Plus everybody knew. I mean, and he was purposefully courting Black voters because, for all intents and purposes, when you read his bio, he actually really believed in, the struggle that they had and wanted to make their lives better. That's apparently who he was. So for me, it's like he and Bobby or he and Martin, to me, it's like those two people, not in tangent, but since they both died 6 weeks apart or 8 weeks apart, for me, it's like, yeah, I really do sit and wonder what it would have been like had neither one of them died that year in that time frame. You look back on it and you think, you talk about America thinking it's dead. We hear people talk about 2020 being the worst year ever. I will still always maintain it's 1968. But that's just my view.
Yeah.
And I was 3. So.
I was alive.
I know you were. Go ahead. Fine. Yeah, I know. I know.
That's good. Thank you for sharing that because that's very, very poignant to this time because the way they died, if they hadn't been assassinated, I think their journey would have had a greater impact because of what they were doing. Because I found out I didn't know this because it's not very well spoken of that Martin Luther King, after he gave the "I Am a Dream" speech, he recanted some of that.
He did. Yeah, it's true.
And we aren't told that. I think that's probably what maybe got him assassinated because he was sort of like, yeah, he was like, no, we actually need to do this. And that was, I think, against what people were like, oh, no.
Well, and a lot of the challenges he had, if you look at history, what he stood for has kind of been rewritten. Pretty much every kid in school is like, it's all about how I have a dream and content of the skin, color of the skin, content of the character. It's been whittled down to one little quick phrase, which makes it easy for people to deal with. Right. But if you read he's like, when I did a play called All the Way 2 years ago. I was playing King in the show. And I watched a lot of his interviews that aren't the ones that you know about. And he was a fiery guy. It wasn't like he was all love and happiness. And he was for peaceful protest. But at some point, it was like, no, well, yeah, but we know that we don't want violence. And he wasn't Malcolm,
Right.
but he also will realize that that's not the only thing. It's not about peace, love, and joy all the time. And eventually, what really got him, I won't say in trouble, but where he had trouble was, the young Panthers of the world thought his method of, peace, love, and joy was a little bit too staid, and we don't need you anymore because you're too much about cooperation. And then he said basically that the Vietnam War was wrong, and that lost him a lot of support from a lot of whites in the country, because there were people who were supporting what he was doing because he was the black guy. But now you're going against the Vietnam War, and you can't do that. So when he died, he was still the most prominent civil rights figure out there, but he had a shitload of enemies. I started reading it, but I never got through it. I was reading the King trilogy, the civil rights thing by Taylor Branch, Parting of the Waters and Pillar of Fire and Canaan's Edge. It's like 2,000 pages on the Civil War, the civil rights movement. But you read the details of King's life, and you find out that just how complicated his life was.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Every,
And how the struggle was, the struggle was kind of whittled down into little sound bites to make it pretty.
Yeah.
Or packed.
palatable to the masses.
Yeah, exactly.
We can't say that, no, he actually said this, and it was had an edge to it, because then we would have had Malcolm and Martin, different but slightly similar when it came to,
Yep.
Whew, Lord have mercy.
So anyway, those are the proud people.
But one of the greatest lessons you've learned thus far, and that has helped you in your life.
You have to think of failure as a lesson, not a loss. That's because it's, for years I was, I said before in the interview, I didn't want to fail. But, the most successful people in the world fail, succeed. As opposed to, there's another image of having failed, just, weighing you down. That's, you fail so you can, okay, that didn't work. So how can I change this and try it this way? Oh, it didn't work. Let me try it that way. It didn't work. Oh, that's how it works. Yeah. So that's a lesson I'm still working on getting through all the time. So yeah. Failure's a lesson, not a loss.
Yeah.
It really is about learning things. Yeah. As we get older, it's like you're never too old to learn stuff. And I honestly, I'll say this too in my field, ShawnJ, as guy in the mid-50s. When you change careers, the medicine may be the same, but you have to learn how to do things differently. When I left emergency medicine and started doing primary care, worst decision I ever made, by the way. But that was medicine I should never have done. But you have to learn something. Then when I got into occupational medicine, there's all these rules and regulations. You have to worry about OSHA and deal with this company. So it was a brand new chance to learn something new. And it was like, oh, okay, this is how I keep my mind stimulated. Now with my new job, that is where I am right now in this field with trying to learn it. So, but it's exciting because it's brand new, and you have to use whatever you've learned in the past and be able to use that to learn how to do this. I mean, I know the medicine, but it is trying to figure out what these symbols mean, what these abbreviations mean, and what this means over here, and what this regulation here is this and that. What? Okay. I have no idea what you're talking about, but I'm sure I'll get it.
Well, you're most definitely not bored.
No, you can't be bored because I've got so much stuff to learn. It's ridiculous.
Exciting.
It is a long time. I mean, and then I do have my moments of I'm not learning this fast enough, but then I have to sit back and remember, okay, there's no fast enough. Just learn it. There's nobody, no one, and especially at this company, nobody's holding a gun to my head saying you have to learn this yesterday. They're just saying you've got the time to learn this. So just take your time learning it. And so I just have to give myself a break. Which me, I always give myself a break.
Be gentle with yourself.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Would you prefer to change the world or the impact someone had on the world? And what would that be?
Oh, you rephrased that one. Okay. Change the world or change someone's impact on, you're talking about the world itself or just where we are, the country? Or does it matter?
I give
the
you
world.
If you had the ability to change the world or one's
person impact on the world, who would that, or what, who would that?
So I won't say the impact, but changing the world for me would be, if I could, and this is altruistic as hell, but are you saying if there's a way I could change the world, or just if I could change the world, period?
I'll let you decipher how you want to
Here's what I would like. I would like to be able to change the world. I would love to be that person who's got as much money as he possibly could to give it to people who don't have, so I can fix shit. And I don't know if that's equal distribution or putting kids through college in the world, or just, changing housing for people in the world who have nothing. But just to be that, I'd love to be the Bill Gates of the world and just have so much money I can just put it out there and fix what I think is wrong. And that is giving people, money doesn't make things better. I don't know, basic stuff, housing, clean water, food, that kind of education. If I had unlimited resources, I'd give, scholarships to kids who aren't going to get scholarships, that kind of thing. I mean, that's what I'd love, to have that kind of money. So much money I don't know what to do with. I know what to do with it, because I'm not going to take it with me. So let me just spread it out to people and make a difference. Not because I want people to think, oh, look at Fred. Fred was a wonderful person, but just because that's the right thing to do. It's altruistic, but it's what I want.
What challenges have you encountered, had in your life, that you feel have helped shape you and or made you weary?
I mean, I talked about before my divorce, because that was the moment that really helped me start to realize I've got to work on me. That's a specific challenge. But I would say the challenge of having to, and I say defend myself as a black man in the non-black world, is the biggest challenge I've had, especially in positions of authority. And having to learn that, as a black man in this country, not to be defined by some other people. To learn to define yourself. Because once you define yourself, then people, they'll respect you. I hope. You hope they do. But mostly I respect myself.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, in the self-defining, it doesn't matter what anyone else says.
Right.
Or says. You're still walk through the world,
exactly.
how you see and feel yourself. And that way,
Mm-hmm.
what you come up against, though it may be challenging or may piss you off, it won't have an effect in the way in which how you see yourself and how you
exactly.
through the world.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big thing.
And you have to learn that strength. You have to learn how to you have to maintain that strength and learn how to harness it and use it. For good, pretty much for good if you can. Yeah. But also for defense if you have to. That's one place where that actually benefited myself. The whole not wanting to make people disappointed or hurt people, whatever. Was you work hard to make sure that you know what you're doing, that you're good at what you're doing, that what you're doing is for the greater good of everybody, and that you're confident enough not to let somebody tell you can't do it for whatever reason. I mean, if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. But don't tell me I can't do it because you don't have trust in me because of the way I look. Because that ain't happening. And you can try to devalue and undermine and all that, but when I was younger and old and newer, it was challenging because I would kind of think, well, maybe I'm not doing this kind of right. But we all know what the argument is. It's like, no, can't do that. You're not going to gaslight. Yeah. So there I am.
Well, what would you like to be most remembered for by those who know and love?
I guess I would like to be remembered as someone people feel made them feel worthy. In other words, I want to make sure that my friends feel like, know that I love them, I respect them, I trust them, I am there for them, and that they're worth everything. It's not a simple question, but it's just kind of like I want to. That's why I hate the question.
I think let me see if I have it. You want people to remember you for having seen them and embraced them.
Yes,
And
that's it. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Thank you. I figured you'd be able to translate Fred speak.
No, it's one of those, you want to make sure you did something that mattered to folks.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great, lead behind, is that if you move through the world with that intent, hopefully the impact is people who encountered you, people who were in your sphere, are gonna go like, I felt seen. He saw me, he heard me. I never felt like he was blowing smoke up my ass. He was present, and I think that's really big, boo.
I tell Kelly this all the time. There's some days I feel like, like I don't know what would happen if I needed something and who would come to help. I don't have that concept. If there are people out there who would, I think there are, but I just don't. I just don't think that way, because I see other people who talk all the time. They call their friends on the phone, and I'm just the guy who's just. Fred he's there. I mean, I'll always be there for you. I hope that's what people think. But I'm just not the person who calls every 5 seconds and wants to have a conversation about stuff.
If you're going through some shit, who you can call.
This is true. This is very true.
And if something went down, who you can call, right? Yep. So I think in the moment, like, if you've been forced to think about it, no, but like if you're in it, you're like going, oh no, I need to call so-and-so because they're gonna be down here and boom, boom, And I think we all know that. That's it. Yeah. Unless if there's something else you would like to share that you may feel would help someone listening, watching this, that may go, oh, that's always an opportunity.
Let's see, if I do that, I'll be talking for another 45 minutes.
Pause on that.
No, thank you very much. No, I think a lot of the stuff that might help has already been said. Yeah. No,
but it's good. I appreciate this.
Oh, no problem. It was you.
That's always my one of my goals with Underneath the Shade Tree is that at some point along someone's journey, something helped them through, and that someone witnessing this may go, okay, I got this.
Yeah.
Or, it's going to be hard for a while. And I think that's, for me, it's the conversation.
Yeah. Especially what we're going through now, which is we've gone through before, what we're going through now. I'm not talking about shelter in place. That's something different.
I think it's a compound of COVID-19 and
race. Yep.
All coming in together. And because folks can't go anywhere, they got to look at it.
They do.
And they don't like what they're seeing. So it's like, welcome to our world.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And I think that's why I don't react as crazily as people do on social media about the world is terrible and the country's falling apart and we're never going to be the same and we're losing our democracy, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, especially when it comes to race, it's like, this is not a new song. This is a key change, the 40th key change, but we will get through this. You get to see, I'll sit back and look and say, yeah, things are different than they were in 1964. Absolutely. They're different than they were in 74, 84, 94. We do make progress. It's just one step forward, 2 steps back. That's just how it goes. But, so don't stop working. Don't get complacent. Right. That's the challenge we have. We get complacent. It's too easy. What did I say in that video I posted? It's like, you got to decide if you want to get uncomfortable.
That's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole other conversation.
I was about to go there, and I went, nope, we're gonna.
Oh, we're done. That's a different conversation for a different day.
That's in the shade. which is a different
show.
different show.
Maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll do it, Jade, and we'll just reverse roles.
So I would like to thank my guest, Fred Pitts, for joining me on Underneath the Shade Tree.
Thanks ever so for joining us underneath the shade tree. If you enjoyed the show, please click like and subscribe, and be sure to join us next time. And remember, every day above ground is a gift, so let's do our best to make it matter with grace, courage, and no regrets. Now go be fantabulously fierce.